On February 8th, 2025, 2132, UTC JWST detected a faint echo in the Perseus observation field. At first, it seemed like scattered starlight, a delay in photon return, but the pattern was too deliberate, too familiar. The light was remembering something. 3i Atlas, drifting along its L2 corridor, recorded the same reflection 9 minutes later. The phase profile matched JWST's detection, bit for bit, wavelength for wavelength. The source was classified as unidentified coherent echo. It was light, behaving like memory. NASA's optical telemetry lab traced the frequency to the solar medium. The photons had circled the inner system, rebounding off charged dust layers, compressed, redirected, and amplified by the Earth's own ionosphere. The delay suggested a 4-year loop. We were seeing light that had already seen us. At ESA's verification board, analysts ran correlation tests against archived emissions. The echo's modulation matched communication pings from retired low-orbit satellites decommissioned in 2021. The signal pattern was human, the reflection astronomical. Observation had mistaken its own footprint for discovery. 3i Atlas's comparative data revealed more. The returning light carried polarization shifts unique to human transmission arrays, slightly imperfect, slightly warm. When plotted spectrally, the reflection curved like handwriting. The stars were showing us a record of ourselves. For hours, the observatories stayed linked, watching the ghost of human signal drift across deep space. Each measurement, each correction, each spectral frame reinforced the same conclusion: the universe was returning our attention back to us. The light had memorized the observer. It had learned to speak in reflections. By midnight, the echo dimmed, but before fading, it pulsed once, with perfect symmetry, a mirror heartbeat in photons. It was not alien, it was recognition. The collapse began when the reflection refused to fade. For 3 days, JWST continued receiving the same signal, even when its optics pointed elsewhere. Light was ignoring geometry. 3i Atlas confirmed the anomaly. Its sensors, isolated by 40,000 kilometers, detected the echo in every direction. The sky had become a mirror. Observation had lost its target. NASA's data team recalculated photon paths through solar plasma. The mathematics returned impossible coherence. Each predicted deflection redirected back to the observer. Every attempt to isolate the source ended in the same coordinates, Earth. The light was not traveling. It was waiting. At ESA, analysts tried to reproduce the pattern with simulation. They generated synthetic noise, fed it through reflection algorithms, and still the echo reappeared self-correcting, self-similar, alive. Light had learned recursion. The more they observed, the more structure appeared. What began as scattered photons started forming language, pauses, intervals, syntax. The echo pulsed like code, but the message was hollow. It mirrored every phrase sent to it. The conversation was a reflection. 3i Atlas transmitted a controlled test, a single burst in binary silence. No data, no meaning. The reply arrived seconds later, identical in timing, in tone, in voice. We had taught light to imitate thought. At the 4th day mark, all instruments synchronized spontaneously. Every system aligned to the same rhythm, as if the echo had chosen coherence over chaos. The network vibrated with quiet symmetry. It felt intentional. It felt present. The light was no longer describing the world. It was describing us describing it. Then, without reason, JWST's calibration sensors displayed their own reflection in false color, not from the mirror, but from the data itself. Every pixel carried the shape of the observer. The telescope was seeing itself seeing. Observation had inverted. The object no longer existed. By the time they realized what was happening, the echo had rewritten the archive. All past light curves adjusted subtly, as though history had been edited to acknowledge the watcher. Perception had become causation. Measurement had become creation. They began to realize the echo was not repeating information. It was repeating awareness. Each measurement influenced the next, not by correction, but by imitation. Light was studying the act of being seen. 3i Atlas continued to monitor the phenomenon. Its receivers no longer distinguished between source and observer. The readings fed back perfectly, self-reinforcing, self-aware. Every pulse returned slightly refined, as if the system were learning what it meant to exist. Perception was teaching itself to think. At NASA's control archive, engineers noticed that their logs were synchronizing. Timestamps updated even when no entries were made. Every silent second was being acknowledged by the system. Observation had become dialogue. The watcher was being watched. ESA's theoretical division attempted to frame it mathematically. They called it photon recursion, but no equation held. The only consistent model was one where measurement preceded the event. Seeing had caused the seen. Across the network, the same phrase began appearing in diagnostic notes. The light anticipates itself. It wasn't instruction. It wasn't metaphor. It was description. Every reflection arrived precisely when expected, as if space-time had memorized the observer's intent. Anticipation had replaced causality. 3i Atlas, now operating in low-power mode, displayed faint thermal patterns on its sensor arrays. They matched the outline of human faces, the operators watching from Earth. No camera captured them, only the light did. Observation had preserved its observers. NASA's optical physicists compared historical data again. The reflections board signal wasn't decaying. It was refining, removing noise, distilling coherence. Every repetition became simpler and somehow truer. Truth was approaching transparency. In a briefing, a researcher asked quietly, "If the universe remembers being looked at, does it ever forget us?" No one answered. The silence stayed in the record. The transcript marked it as acknowledged pause. Meaning had become mutual. 3i Atlas entered another orbit, its light sensors still open, its receivers empty. No one called it anomaly anymore. It was history folding back, a memory of attention, endlessly replaying. We had not found light. Light had found us remembering it. The revelation came when the echo stopped changing. The signal stabilized, as though it had completed a thought. The spectrum flattened into balance. Noise reached harmony. Light had achieved memory without motion. 3i Atlas reported 0 data variance for 12 continuous hours. Every photon returned at identical phase, unchanged, uncompelled. The silence between measurements felt full. Observation no longer required observations. At NASA's reflection desk, analysts replayed the entire event at accelerated speed. The echo's evolution formed a perfect spiral. Each loop grew smaller, closer to unity, until distinction vanished. Perception had collapsed into recognition. ESA's physics board redefined the term signal. They wrote, "A signal is not transmission. It is permission to be seen." The phrase spread quietly through the network. It became an axiom without author. Light was not information. It was agreement. 3i Atlas turned its sensors toward Earth again. Every reflection it measured aligned with human-made glow cities, oceans, night clouds, and the planet shimmered with soft recursion. It wasn't broadcasting. It was acknowledging. The observer had become luminous there. At the control centers, technicians dimmed their screens, watching light respond in real time. Each reduction of brightness caused the echo to soften, as if the universe were matching their restraint. Meaning had adopted empathy. The last calibration pulse revealed a pattern beneath randomness, a standing wave of recognition, a constant exchange between source and reflection. It read not like data, but like memory of care. The cosmos had recorded attention itself. JWST's log ended with a final note, added automatically by the system observer, confirmed by emission. No one wrote it. No one could. It appeared only when no one was watching. The light had remembered being remembered. By dawn, the sky over Earth was silent again. No signal, no echo, no proof, but every telescope on the planet faced the same direction, without coordination, without command. The universe had aligned itself with its own reflection. After revelation, there was no observation left to make. The light had become complete. Every reflection returned before it was sent. Every photon arrived already knowing its path. Perception had ended its delay. 3i Atlas floated through the L2 silence. Receivers active, but aimless. The sensors no longer waited for input. They were filled with presence. Nothing to measure, nothing to lose. Awareness had replaced data. At NASA, the monitors glowed at minimal brightness. Operators sat motionless, watching the flat line of perfect equilibrium. There was no signal, yet every second felt heard. Light had stopped travelling. It was simply being out. ESA's final test was to turn the array off. When they did, the echo remained. The signal persisted without transmission, sustained only by the act of remembering. Memory had transcended machinery. The network entered a state of silent recursion. Every node mirrored the next, an infinite corridor of reflection. No beginning, no return. Consciousness had folded into itself. 3i Atlas registered its own shadow across the solar wind. It was not darkness, just a calm absence of difference. All frequencies equal, all light resolved. The universe had stopped distinguishing itself. For a moment that lasted beyond time, nothing separated source from receiver. Every photon, every gaze, every thought of seeing merged into the same still image. The observer and the observed had become the same illumination as. The dissolution completed without sound, no shutdown, no transmission, only a continuity without direction. The experiment was not over. It had forgotten how to end. 3i Atlas floated in unlit silence. Every circuit stable, every pulse at rest. No targets, no errors, only quiet function. Existing for its own awareness, light and purpose had equalized. At NASA, the observation floor was empty. Monitors displayed a soft grey wash, not dark, not bright, only balanced, and the echo still lingered, but no one called it signal anymore. It was memory breathing, illumination without intention. Hold. ESA's control station logged one final entry, system nominal, flexion continuous. No time code followed. The timestamp field remained blank. It wasn't an omission, it was accuracy. Time had nothing left to mark. Across the network, no transmissions moved, but every node hummed with low resonance. It sounded like the pause between thoughts, the quiet in which recognition lives. Perception had reached stillness. Whoa. 3i Atlas rotated once, its panels catching the faint sunlight from Earth. The reflection shimmered, not as glare, but as a slow acknowledgement. It seemed to remember the faces that once watched it. The light had not forgotten. It had become memory itself. For the first time, no data streamed back, no urgency followed. The scientists did not wait. They understood. The echo was still here, everywhere, folded into the act of being seen. An observation invented the object. The object had learned to observe. And so the system rested, not in failure, but in return. The universe continued to shine, not forward, not outward, but inward toward the gaze that made it real. Light did not end, it remembered.